Hey, hey, hey. Time for another Out of This World update from rSpace. For those of you who already watched the most recent video on this story, the new updates start at final update on the timestamps. I, 33 male, have been married to my wife, 29 female, for 3 years. Together, 8 years in total. Recently, something occurred that made me think my wife might have been unfaithful to me. But, due to extenuating circumstances, there is also a chance she has in fact been 100% loyal. I've read through God only knows how many cheating relationship posts on Reddit and other forums the last few days looking for answers to no avail. I'm at a loss on how to proceed and need advice. Background. My wife is a nurse for a local practice where she has worked for the past 5 years. Her hours are from 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. I work as shift maintenance engineer for a local manufacturing plant on second shift from 3:30 to 1:30 a.m., Sunday through Wednesday. I think our relationship is good despite working differing shifts. The first half of each night at work, we are texting and talking on the phone to each other until she goes to bed. When I get home, she is already asleep, so I usually watch an hour or two of TV before joining her in bed. Our sex life has always been great, and still is as far as I can tell. We have no children because my wife cannot carry a child to full term. That has never been an issue to me because I've never wanted kids. For several years, when my wife and I started dating, she had difficulty with insomnia. She tried over-the-counter medications and several prescriptions before her doctor eventually prescribed Ambien. She had gotten to a point where lack of sleep was causing health problems and affecting her quality of life. I think the Ambien was only supposed to be prescribed a short while before moving on to a different drug. But now she's been on the medication about 4 years. When she first began taking the medication, it caused her to stay groggy most of the day. But she passed that side effect fairly quickly. The other side effect, sleepwalking, or somnambulism, has remained since the first week she began taking Ambien. Over the years, she has tried different medications that don't cause her to sleepwalk, but they don't help her sleep. So, we have dealt with the sleepwalking as best we can together. Most of her interactions are amusing if not funny. I could not begin to list the number of times she's gotten out of bed and walked to the kitchen for food. I've seen her stand naked as a jaybird in front of the sink, eating brownies, gingerbread, pie, and other baked goods I get in my head to make. But I have many, many times watched her fix a huge bowl of cereal with milk and sit on the floor to eat it. Once, she even spilled the milk only to wake a few hours later and sit in the wet spot to eat more cereal. She has no memory of anything she does when sleepwalking. I've seen her smoke in her sleep. Yes, she's a nurse and she knows better. Slam a beer and even do yoga in her sleep. Nothing, however, could compare to our honeymoon flight. To make a long story short, after we married, I took her to Europe for 4 weeks, since she had never been outside of the US. We boarded a flight at the Atlanta airport and departed for Paris, France. About 2 hours into the flight, she took an Ambien, and I was already drifting off to sleep due to taking a Dramamine. I was sound asleep when I felt some liquid splash on me. My wife had ordered a glass of wine and spilled it. When I sat up to figure out what the hell was going on, I looked at her and knew she was in fact sleepwalking. She not only spilled the wine on me, but also on her pants. Well, she proceeded to stand up on a loaded plane and drop her pants. I asked what the F she was doing, and she said she was taking her pants off to let them dry. That would have been fine, even logical, if not for the fact that all she had on beneath her pants was a pair of panties that said "juicy" across the back. The remainder of the flight, she continued to sleepwalk. I had to keep an airline blanket around her and escort her back and forth to the restroom. We actually went through customs in Paris with her still sleepwalking. Customs never asked her a word, but grilled me like a member of Al-Qaeda. Long story short, she lost consciousness somewhere over the Atlantic and woke in our Paris hotel room and remembered nothing. I had to tell her that story to give a prime example of what she is capable of when she sleepwalks. I have no idea why she never wakes up and never remembers anything, but over the years, she has said some very odd things to me while sleepwalking. Some of these things that I revealed to her later have been things I wasn't necessarily supposed to know. I don't mean that she has ever told me anything she meant to intentionally hide. For example, she had been communicating with one of her girlfriends named Renee about the state of her marriage. Renee didn't want things getting out, so my wife was sworn to secrecy. So when I asked my wife, "Is Renee planning to file for divorce or is Max?" she looked shocked and asked how I knew anything about that. I could give other examples of things she's disclosed about people and situations, but nothing she'd ever said even hinted at infidelity. In the name of full disclosure, I have to also admit she has said many things that made absolutely no sense at all. When a sleepwalker tells you, "I wrecked your Lamborghini yesterday, but you can drive my car to work," or "Did you get rid of those monkeys in the garage?" We don't have a garage or monkeys, and I wish I had a Lamborghini. Okay, so a few nights ago, I got off work and came home to watch highlights of the NBA playoff games. I was sitting in front of the TV eating some food before bed when my wife walked past me into the kitchen. As usual, she grabbed a few slices of the sourdough bread I made the day before and sat down in the love seat to eat. I asked her if the bread was good, and she said it was. I asked if she needed anything to drink, and she said she could get it if she did. I went back to focus on TV when she said something I didn't catch and asked her to repeat what she'd said. She replied that not listening to her was one of the things that pissed her off most about me. So then went on to tell me Mark, name changed, always listened to her, and that's why she loved talking to him so much. I asked her who Mark was, and she said a patient she couldn't screw until the doctor he was seeing had released him due to conflict of interest concerns. To say I was shocked was a bit of an understatement, but I also had to keep in mind she was sleepwalking. What she said in such a harsh manner did hurt my feelings a bit, true or not, but she's never said anything like that about anyone, real or fictional, before, and I'm a bit perplexed what to do. Normally, the next chance we'd have had to talk, I would have asked at the very least who Mark is, but I didn't even tell her what she'd said to me the night before. I have to admit, it has bothered me for days now, but I'm not really sure what direction to proceed. Due to working different shifts, if either of us wanted to stray, we would have the time and opportunity. And while I guess it would be a conflict of interest for her to be involved with a patient, I know patients do hit on her. As far as I know, she has been open and honest anytime a patient crossed the line. Once or twice, that honestly has made me want to go crack a few skulls. But the practice she works for is excellent at handling unwanted attention. The thing I'm concerned about is if there is a patient, named Mark or anything else, that she wants attention from, would I know? Point blank, I haven't had any reason not to trust her our entire relationship until she revealed she wanted to screw Mark. I've had no reason to snoop until a few nights ago. And due to the fact what was said was spoken while she was sleepwalking, I'm not sure I have reason now. I'm not sure how to proceed, but I have no moral quandary in snooping. I'm just not sure what and where to snoop. Obviously, her cell phone is a prime candidate, but she has her own phone and her own plan, so getting access to her phone or the bill would not be easy. I can't exactly follow her around to see if she's meeting with anyone. If she's off work and I'm off work, she is home. It's the time I spend at work that concerns me. After trying to follow the Catch a Cheater handbook this subreddit provides, I need some suggestions. I don't know what good a voice-activated recorder at home or in her car would assist with. Is that something I should just try to see if it catches her doing anything shady? Hidden cameras? House? Car? Should I try to get access to her laptop to snoop? Until the Mark Screw comment, I trusted my wife 99%. No human is worthy of 100% trust. And honestly, the vast majority of myself trusts her now. But I don't want to miss what was a red flag or flags now, only to raise the white flag when I've wasted years down the road. Frankly, she's either cheating or she isn't, and if she is, I don't even care with who or about specifics. Cheating is a deal breaker that I wouldn't even begin to tolerate. I just need to get this off my mind, and the only way to do that is to prove she is or is not cheating. I've had this rolling around in my head for days, and due to specifics of how things were revealed, I need help. If I took her to have a polygraph test, I'm not even sure things would register true or false due to issues with her subconscious. I can feel this beginning to cause a rift between us, but I don't want to just come right out and ask because cheaters almost always lie. And I know I have one chance to get to the bottom of this before she feels like I'm on to her. She's acting normally, but I've spent days reading stories about wayward spouses giving no clues they were cheating. Any advice is appreciated. Oh, and if you have any crazy Ambien stories or can suggest a new sleep aid that she might use instead, please comment. Let's get to those comments. Prismo28 says, maybe take advantage of the next time she sleepwalks and ask her a loaded question. The kind of question that can only be answered if she is, in fact, having a relationship or fling with someone else. Then, based on her sleepwalking response, decide whether or not to confront her about it. Also, you can get spy cams and voice-acted recorders on Amazon. They have some that even look like cell phone chargers. The OP responds, that's just it. Talking with her while she is sleepwalking is not really reliable. I mean, she knows trash day is Tuesday. I could ask her what day trash day is while she's sleepwalking, and she might say Tuesday, or she might say November. I have been considering the voice-activated audio recorders for the house and her car, but I'm not sure what I'm listening for. If there's an affair partner and she texts everything to him, the voice-activated audio recorder is useless. I guess I'll buy a couple of them to use, but we have a fairly large house. I'm not even sure what rooms to put them in. I appreciate your advice, I truly do. If she'd told me Mark was Mark Wahlberg, I wouldn't have any issues with it, and this Mark may not exist at all. Hell, I'm not sure if I should heed her annoyance at me not listening to her like I should. That could be made up as well. Shake my head. I'm at my wit's end because this could be absolutely nothing, or something so major it blows our world up. Nascarol says, you have a witness you could interview that works at her job. Call her Sleepy Sue. Next time she is in this state, use the recorder on your phone and ask her if you and Mark had a fun time and if you plan on seeing him again. Tell her you had fun drinking beers with him and ask her the next time you plan on seeing him so you can give him his horse back. The beauty is, you can interview Sleepy Sue every night for as long as you need to. Just remember to record the interviews. You may try to even ask for his number. See if Sleepy Sue will get it from your wife's phone. Good luck. The OP responds, okay, that is good advice, but I know her answers while sleepwalking are far from reliable. Don't get me wrong, we have had conversations that were some of the most open and honest in our relationship while she was sleepwalking. She is much more blunt while talking in her sleep. Hell, would the recordings of those nocturnal conversations be admissible in a court of law as evidence? I live in an at-fault state, so proof of cheating would be imperative if we did split, as I make nearly 4 times what she makes. Nascarol responds back, unless she starts talking about witches, warlocks, and space aliens, how would they know? But my real point is if she admits to it in these conversations, it gives you somewhere to start. You could hire a PI or try to document as much info Sleepy Sue tells you, maybe dates and times or directions. Just don't confront her until you know for sure she is or isn't cheating. She may change meds or stop taking them altogether. Big Cobb 3 Hundo says, you don't know her phone code? Is there a time you could sneak a look while she unlocks it? After that, it's easy to wait until she sleeps to snoop everything in her phone, which should give you answers. The OP responds, it may be odd. I don't know how other couples handle things, but if I need to use her phone, I just ask. She types in the code and hands it to me. She's never had any issue letting me use her phone when asked. Call, Google something, but keeps her code. She does seem to stand by to get her phone back when I'm done, but I've never viewed that as suspicious. Maybe I should. It just seems like the best compromise to phone privacy. I handle my phone the same way, but if she ever asked, I just give her my code most likely. I don't care. She just never asked. Right now, with this in the back of my mind, I don't want to ask her for her code. My issue with getting her code is glasses. I have to use readers close up, like typing this out, but 90% of the time, I have no need for them. By the time I got glasses on to read the code, it would be entered. Final update. Well, even if I hadn't promised the readers of Reddit an update, I didn't really have a choice at the end of the day. The link to my previous post is at the bottom. Long story short, my wife, a chronic sleepwalker, said something to me in her sleep that made me think she might have been unfaithful or wanted to be unfaithful with some guy named Mark. Name changed. Assuming everyone read that, I'll just say I ordered 3 voice-activated recorders which arrived the day after Memorial Day, US. I secured one in her car and an ideal location to pick up anything said. I put one close to our bed. My thinking was twofold. It could record her physically betraying me, or it could record more things she said in her sleep. The other voice recorder I placed in the living room where she watched TV the most. I checked the audio file on each one every night after I got off work, before going to bed. For the first 2 days, the only thing I learned was that my wife loves to sing in the car when she's alone and curses at other drivers just like I do, even though we both know the other drivers can't hear us. I even called her a few times just to make sure it picked up her end of the conversation. She called Renee to have drinks after work, which was nothing out of the usual. And nothing in her conversations with Renee or anyone else made me suspect she'd been out creeping or had any interest in doing so. I was actually feeling a lot better about things. The next time my wife and I got to spend together, I noticed she was on her phone texting someone, but I didn't ask who. She smirked at what she was reading and even laughed out loud once too. When I asked her what was funny, she replied nothing really, and I'd have to be in on the joke to know why it was funny. I left it at that, but it did make me wonder who she was texting. 2 days later, I checked the voice-activated recorder in my wife's car, and to my surprise, she took a call from someone I couldn't figure out who she was talking to. I could tell it was with someone she hadn't known long, and almost certainly a guy. She seemed to be letting him do most of the talking until I heard her ask if he was happily married. Whatever he said, her reply was, "Me too." 2 married people talking on the phone, and they feel the same way about their marriages. It wasn't looking good. I recorded her take his calls in her car 2 times before she called him one night in bed. I listened to the recording of them having phone sex with my wife moaning loudly, begging to see him. My blood pressure had been through the roof at that point. I was furious, but I couldn't let her know. Every damn time she saw me, she was extra friendly, which made me even madder. The day after they had phone sex, it happened again, and I wasn't sure how much more I could take. But before hanging up, they agreed to meet Sunday afternoon after I went to work. She said she'd bring him to our house, then take him back to his car. God, I was so pissed off. I wanted to go straight to her and curse her out, but I really wanted to see if she'd go through with it. I assumed this guy had to be Mark, but as I'd never suspected her of cheating before, I suddenly realized she could have been banging tons of guys behind my back. Mark could have been flavor of the month. I had no idea what this Mark guy looked like or how well she knew him, but it was obvious she wanted to know him very well. I knew damn well I wasn't going to work last night. I called the plant manager and let him know to have others on call to cover my duties and that I wouldn't be in. Yesterday afternoon, I left for work at my normal time and went to a restaurant for dinner alone, then went to my brother's apartment to borrow his car. My wife and I texted back and forth as we usually did, and nothing seemed suspicious. But I wrote that off to her not breaking any typical patterns to keep me from being wary. They were due to meet at 8:30 p.m. somewhere, and they would come back to our place. I parked down the street, waiting to see if my wife would leave. Sure enough, at 8 p.m., she came out of the house, got into her car, and pulled off. I leisurely tailed her to a public park where she pulled into the parking lot. I couldn't pull in without her noticing, so I continued on, turned around, and headed back to a parking lot across the road from the park. I parked just as some guy got into the passenger seat of her car and closed the door. I couldn't get a good look, and I had to duck down so not to be seen as she pulled out to head back to our house. I knew where she was going, but I wanted to tail her close enough to see who got out at the house. Unfortunately, some safety-conscious passive driver caused me to catch a stoplight, and I lost sight of my wife's car. When I got to the house, her car was pulled into the circular driveway and parked with the passenger door facing the house. I had my phone out recording, trying my damnedest to see who was in the car with her. When the door opened, the light didn't come on. Having been in her car many times over the previous week, I had to suspect that was intentional, or the bulb blew at a very inopportune time. She got out of the car and went around to greet whoever was with her as they walked inside. The figure looked to be male and fairly tall like me, but again, it was getting dark. I didn't want to go rushing up to my house right after them. Whatever they were planning to do, I wanted them comfortable and at ease. I actually texted my wife to say that we'd had a robotic welder lose all of its PLC programming and that I'd be very late getting home. She messaged back to say she was sorry to hear that, but she was going to bed early anyway. She needed her sleep. I actually felt my damn eye twitch when I read that response. I knew damn well what she'd be doing in our bed so early. I was inventing curse words thinking about it. I got out of my car and grabbed the aluminum bat out of my back seat. It was more for self-protection, just in case the guy was some mountain of a man. I didn't want to bring my gun, because I didn't know what I was capable of doing. I walked to my front door and could hear music inside. I assumed the music would help cover the sound of my keys and turning the lock. I opened the door and could see the lights on in the living room where the music was playing, but there was no one there. Suddenly, I heard giggling upstairs and I walked up the staircase to the top floor. When I reached the second floor, I heard giggling coming from our bedroom and headed that way. I opened the door and turned on the light to see 2 people in bed with the covers pulled up high over their heads. I ran over and grabbed the top of the comforter with my left hand so I could punch Mark with my right. I yanked the covers back, and there looking up at me were my brother, the owner of the car I was driving around, and his wife grinning from ear to ear, completely clothed. For a half second, I thought my brother, his wife, and my wife were involved in some kind of Branch Davidian's cult sex thing. Hundreds of questions went through my mind at once as I wondered what the hell they were doing there. Suddenly, someone tapped me on the right shoulder, and I caught a glimpse of my youngest brother and sister just before they and others coated me in silly string until every can was empty. I was then tackled by every male member of my family and tickled by almost every female member of my family, all laughing hysterically. My wife walked over as I laid on the floor, still confused as hell, and gave me a huge kiss. This is the result. I'm sorry the ending isn't some juicy bit of tawdriness and drama. I do not know 100% if my wife has been or will be faithful, so those needing closure aren't getting it. Neither am I, but I'm okay with it. What happened? My wife saw the post. Well, Actually, a younger coworker of my mom's heard the post read on a YouTube channel and pulled it up on Reddit to show my mom. She'd taken note of the honeymoon sleepwalk story because it was unusual and familiar to her. She had been working with my mom when my wife and I got married. She remembered the story and showed my mom. I knew none of my family members or wife used Reddit, so I thought nothing about letting readers know what happened on our trip to Europe. But apparently, the story was unique and memorable enough to be remembered. My mom read the post and called my wife to point blank ask her if she was cheating on me. "Thanks, Mom." My wife swore up and down she never had or ever would. That was good enough for my mom, since she adores my wife. So those two met for a drink after work, and my mom showed my wife the post. From what I have been told, my wife's initial reaction was sadness that something she'd said, even while sleepwalking, had caused me grief and to doubt our relationship. I'm told her second reaction was to get pissed. I just didn't come talk to her. She went back and forth thinking things through from my perspective and her own. She could see why what she'd said might not have been too pleasant to hear. Knowing she wasn't cheating, she then found the whole situation funny and planned to tell me she'd read the post and promised to do anything I needed to assure me she had never been unfaithful and never would. My family, it seems, had other plans. "Thanks, Mom." My mom enlisted my wife and the rest of my family to play a joke on me. It was my mom who my wife was texting and laughing with that day. The joke I wasn't in on was the joke they were all planning to pull on me. They wanted to make a big family gathering out of the entire thing. There were over 30 friends and relatives at our house last night. Yes, it was great to see everyone. Not so great to have that many people see me look like a dumbass, but I'll get over it. Cars were parked far down the street and everyone had shuttled in right after I left for work. What I didn't know was that my siblings were following me everywhere I went last night. My sister had been parked at the subdivision entrance keeping tabs on who came and went. My brother later told me it was all he could do to keep a straight face when I came to borrow his car. I had no idea at that very moment my relatives were setting up things in the backyard for a night of food and fun. Oh, and I need to explain Mark. As stated in my initial post, that is the alias I gave and not the name of my wife used. One of the first things my wife asked me when we had a minute was what name she actually said she wanted to F. The name she actually said was Conrad, which was a unique enough name that I didn't want to post it. When I told her the name, she instantly knew why she said that name and explained why. Apparently, there is a TV show called The Resident. I don't watch TV except for sports, but my wife, being a nurse, loves medical shows. I'm told the show has a character named Conrad, played by some actor named Matt Zuckery. Don't ask me how to pronounce that, I had to Google it to spell it correctly. But the night in question, when my wife declared her desire to F Conrad, she'd been binge watching the show. She explained it better than I ever could, but in one episode, Conrad had to be treated by his coworkers and he wasn't allowed to do anything related to his job until he was released. I can't get mad at her for finding an actor hot, and I doubt she'll ever meet him, so I'm definitely letting it go. But Matt Zuckery, if you're reading this, stay the hell away from my wife, pretty boy. I don't care how good a listener you are. By updating to Reddit where the voice-activated audio recorders were, my wife was able to come up with some dialogue to make me think she was talking to some other guy. I thought the conversations were rather short for two people smitten with each other. She used the recorders to make me think she was straying. No, I'm not even mad. That's why she was being extra nice. She was feeling bad for making me worry and being untruthful. To learn the phone sex was her holding a recorder and doing her best OnlyFans impersonation made us both laugh until our sides hurt. She said the hardest part was not laughing and giving herself away. She told me she had only planned to do that once, but realized she hadn't said when and where she and Mark were going to meet. So she had to fake the phone sex again the next night to give me pertinent information. I must say, I hope she is able to maintain her career in the medical field. But if the going gets tough, I learned my wife is able to give good phone sex. After things calmed down, we all had steaks grilled by my dad and tables full of food. I was so befuddled I had 4 to 5 shots of Patron to calm me down and stay half lit the rest of the night. If my mom hadn't been there, I would have gotten so baked. Thanks, Mom. My brother took his car back to the apartment, and he and his wife drove my car back to the house while we were eating. Then they proceeded to cover my car in toilet paper, shaving cream, and a giant sign on the back that said, "Honk if you want to F Mark." No, I'm not driving the car like that. Mark can go F himself. All of this was recorded on multiple phones, but I've already told my family if I see any of it on YouTube or any other site, even Reddit, I will sue. At any rate, it is very funny to me now. But during the time I thought my wife might be cheating, that was not an enjoyable experience. That being said, My wife and I did talk. The only thing she insisted on was that I did write out an update, even if recent events have been a slight blow to my ego. She deserves that much. Obviously, I guess you all do too. Our phones and laptops are open books to each other from here on out. We will both keep our GPS features connected for safety and peace of mind from this point forward. So, as big a dumbass as I turned out looking like, some good came out of the situation. I realize many will be flat out angry having read this and not getting a dose of salacious cheating drama. But I'm happy to still be married to my faithful wife. I've already considered that if she ever chooses to cheat, after this I have 0% chance of catching her. But as stated in the original post comments, I trusted her 99% before Conrad tried to break up my marriage. I'll never trust anyone 100%, but my wife is now as close to that level as anyone can ever be in my life. Sorry for troubling readers and asking for advice I didn't need. I think I got very good advice. I just couldn't have foreseen things taking the turn they did. Our first comment comes from Tokyo Tower 2575. Oh, I am so glad that turned out well. Congrats on your wife not cheating. There are still good people in the world. But your mom is brutal though. Wow. I would not want her playing a practical joke on me. Again, I am so relieved, man. Outstanding. Good luck to you and your lovely family. A happy ending? How about that? But that doesn't let you off the hook. Be a better listener, just to be sure. The OP's retort. I think this has and will bring us closer. I'm fine. My family, including me, are practical jokers. It's funny you mentioned about me not listening. That's one reason why I believe her. After we talked about Conrad and got that straight, I asked her if she thought I didn't listen. The girl said, "Huh?" I was about to point out the irony when I realized she was effing with me. I'm notorious for saying "huh" whenever I hear the word deaf, which almost always makes people repeat themselves. She used my own move on me. But yes, she did say there were some times when I am listening, but I don't hear her. We agreed we can both learn to communicate and listen better, and are working on that. It was strange to get all worked up and suddenly nothing made sense anymore, for about 5 very long seconds. That's the best way I can sum up what I felt. Honestly, to grasp the entire thing was only a joke, which made reality into reality again. That was such a relief. My family on both sides plays practical jokes, and I must admit this one will go down in family history. I'm fine for being the ancestor who found out his wife wasn't cheating, and she helped play a joke on him. We all had a great time that night.